Okay.
Well, welcome back to the Hit It podcast. I have a legend in the studio here today. Camille Duvall joins me. Welcome, Camille.
Hey, glad to be here this morning. Thanks for inviting me.
So good to have you on the podcast. You know, sometimes we kind of put out things in email blasts and who do you want to have on the podcast? And Camille Duvall always rises to the top. So this episode is actually going to be released in 2024. So you're going to start off the year in 2024 for us. And so we're super excited to have you on the podcast. Before we get started here, just wanted to catch up. What have you been up to these days?
Well, in at the end of 2018, I got recruited to come to California. So that was a big move for me. I lived in New York City for over 30 years. And I got recruited to come out and run the Sierra Sotheby's real estate office, which I've been doing now for 25 years. So yeah, that was exciting. A nice lifestyle change for me. I still do water ski every day. I learned to snow ski when I came out here. I'm a rock climber. I'm a cyclist. I mean, paddleboarder, like this is heaven for me. So I'm really excited to be here. Loving my new life.
Well, very cool. And we know recently the 50th reunion happened at Jack Travers for the World Tournament. So around social media, we saw pictures popping up of you and your brother, and there was so many legends and names and people who showed up for that event. I wanted to start there and just kind of catch up with you. I'm sure that was an amazing reunion.
It was. I mean, I was delighted when I got the call from Jim Clooney to come down and help. He and Brett Thurley, Ronnie Barton, Kim Laskoff kind of put it all together. Those were all legendary names right there in the sport. And so I was delighted to be able to come down and do it. And Jack and Leilani were a huge part of my life from the time just like many of those skiers, from the time I was a teenager till I was an adult. So I was delighted to be able to go and do it. It was so fun to see all the old friends, and also to recognize what the Travers, not only Jack and Leilani, but JT and Natty and all the people have done for our sport and the way they're keeping it alive and moving in the right direction. So yeah, it was an honor and a thrill to be there. It was a beautiful event. And I think it was funny because there were a few people that was on the, like Dina and I, we don't see each other all the time, but it was like we never had been apart. She's like, Camille, we need to do this. We've got some pictures. Can we? So that was sort of fun. It was like we picked up where we left off, but we're just not skiing against each other anymore. So kind of cool.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about the history of your involvement at Jack Travers Ski School. Like, when did you start skiing with Jack, and kind of how did that develop throughout the years?
I started skiing. I was very lucky when Sammy and I were skiing that our dad was always bringing in great coaches. Like we skied with Linda Giddens, Barbara Cooper Clack, the Low Points. I mean, you name it, Ricky McCormick. They've all been at our lake. And so my dad was looking for sort of that next step. And Jack was the man. And in fact, I met Jack when I was 11 years old. And I was at the McCormick Ski School down in Winter Haven, Florida. My dad had sent me there right before my first nationals. I think I'd qualified when I was 10 and I was going to the nationals. I was 11. He goes, you need to get powered up. So we went down to McCormick's, and there were probably 10 boys and me. And one of the boys actually was Wayne Grimdich. He was a little bit older when he was there. So kind of cool to ski with all of those guys. But dinner times were sort of hard because I'm like a little scrawny 10-year-old girl and there's all these like hungry boys and I really wasn't getting much to eat. And so Jack took it upon himself to take me out, make sure I had some food each day while I was going, that was the start of our relationship at that particular point in time when I was 11, but came back to ski with him different points throughout my career. During the middle of my career, even when Sammy and I had our own ski school, we would still go back to Jack's for a second set of eyes. And, when you're out there skiing on the edge of the envelope and you're skiing with Sammy, me, Andy, Dina, Bruce, and Tony, and if those 6 people can't figure it out how to get to the next step, we'd go back to Jack.
Okay.
Figure out how we got to the next buoy or the next, jump rung or whatever that would be. So throughout my entire career, I skied with him. And in fact, I worked at the ski school there. I was the housekeeper and the cook, and I learned how to make spaghetti and a whole lot of different things from Leilani. So they didn't only touch the skiing part of it, but they touched, all of our lives in a lot of different ways and helped shape the people that we are today.
Very, very cool. We recently had Jack and John on the podcast before the World Tournament, and I told both of them, I said, you hang around the sport long enough, you will end up at Jack Travers at some point, whether it's at the ski school or a tournament or a world tournament. It's just amazing how they touch the sport. You mentioned some really big names that, whether you were skiing against Dina or the Nevilles or who have you through those years, I would like to kind of pick up there. Because when I think of Camille Duvall, I think of the Water Ski Pro Tour. And I wanted to get your perspective now looking back on it. I mean, you were really coming up through the ranks, through the rise of the Pro Tour. One of the most famous skiers on ESPN probably would get stopped in public in Orlando and say, "Hey, are you Camille?" I just wanted to get your perspective now as you have time to reflect back on those years.
Well, I would say that all of the skiers who skied in the early 80s up to the early 90s were lucky enough to ski in the golden age of water skiing. And it was a confluence of events. We had a really amazing sponsor in Coors Light. ESPN was kind of in its youth, and they really didn't have the big four and, all that kind of thing. So we had the luxury and privilege and honor to be on national television every Monday night during the summer. I mean, it was fabulous. We would go to the tournaments, we'd ski, we'd do our things. I worked on the commentary part of that, which I was lucky enough. Chris Carmody, who was one of the producers of the Olympics, was working. We had very high level people working on the television end of the sport then. And he was like, "You should try this. You'd probably be good at it." And I was like, "Yeah, I just never stopped talking. So that's probably why." But anyway, yeah, I did that, and that was really fun, and I enjoyed that. So we'd do all the interviews. They'd have the television truck at the ski site. They would cut the 1 hour show overnight, and then we'd go in the morning, we'd voice over, and then they'd beam it straight up to ESPN. So it wasn't live, but it was pretty dang close to it. And we were just, again, really lucky to have that particular moment in time. And it was great for the growth of the sport in many ways. And, it was very different than what they do now. And I'm, again, very proud of where the skiers have taken the sport to kind of get back to that pro level. But I think when water skiing lost its television exposure, a lot of the sponsors pulled back that were outside sponsors, and you've got to be on television or you don't exist, basically. And that was really, I think, hard for the sport in the 90s, 2000s, and then streaming started happening again, and that was a great venue for our sports. I'm really glad that we've embraced that, and they're doing a fantastic job with all of that. So yeah, it was a great time to be a water skier for sure.
Yeah, it's so cool to go back to those tapes. And I remember that my mom would tape those tapes and I would just watch them over and over and over again. And the one that sticks in my mind, you mentioned Wayne Grimdage, is I think it's 1988 Shreveport. I think you were coming back from an injury. You're in the finals. I don't think you needed to run the full pass. You end up running the full pass, and Wayne has a great commentary and call on it. He says, Camille Duvall pouring on the coals, and then you win the event, and then you come back, and Sammy's jumping later on in the show, and you're doing commentary with Wayne as Sammy's jumping. And I was like, man, this is just awesome. You're competing, in the event, and then you're going into the commentary on ESPN. It just seems like it was an unreal experience.
I mean, for sure. And I think not everybody is suited for that. Like always have a lot of things going on, a lot of irons in the fire. And I was also really lucky to have met in the early parts of my career. I met Billie Jean King and Anita de France and Donna de Verona, and they really were the leaders in bringing women's sports to the forefront. So they were always coaching me, like, you can't leave your sport how it was. You need to leave it better. You need to do what you can do, use any celebrity that you have or any power that you have to move your sport forward. And they were very helpful for me to understand sort of what we needed as a sport to get into the Olympics and to get into the US Olympic Committee. And it's just like, it's an amazing sisterhood of very, very smart people, and they are women, and they are happy to have someone stand on their shoulders to get to the next level. So yeah, that was part of my impetus for doing that. And then Sammy and I also had a really great sort of off the water coach. There's a guy named Patrick Leahy, and he had worked with a lot of the golfers, and kind of honing your media skills and making sure you had a story,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you could lead the interview if you needed to with different people. So I was very, very lucky to have had those kind of people in my life early in my career, and that, that helps propel you to where you need to go.
That's amazing you touched on that, because that's one thing I do notice when I go back and I look at those recordings, is that those interviews are just awesome. I mean, everybody seems to have a personality, and that personality comes out. And sometimes it's the good and bad and the ugly, because they're putting a microphone right in front of everybody's face when they come off the water. But yeah, I even remember, Sammy would always have his like new Oakley sunglasses on, and we're checking those out, and there was always something going on. So those interviews were so important. Um, well, you started as a 3 eventer, and then the Pro Tour starts coming along. Of course, you were on multiple world teams and competing at that level on a 3 event level. Um, when did you decide? Because it seems like you slalomed and jumped on the Pro Tour for quite some time. Did it ever just evolve just to slalom, or how did you make that decision?
Well, yes, we were all 3 event skiers in our family. I am not built for trick skiing. I'm a tall, lanky person. Even though as a kid, I was a gymnast, but I got so tall that I was swinging around, hitting the floor. They put me on the diving team. So I always enjoyed that part of the sport. But at a certain point, and Sammy and I sat down and had like a real heart to heart about this, is that here's where you can make your money. Here's where your sponsors are liking you. Tricks, not your strongest event. However, I did this is kind of funny, held more national records in trick skiing. I won a bronze medal in the world, and I won the
Okay.
Masters trick skiing. So I guess I didn't
Okay.
get it that much.
That's legit.
But that took away from the practice for the slalom and the jump, and that's where the money was. That's where the television was. So it was a hard decision to leave it behind, and but I did, and it was good, and clearly it was the right decision. But at the end of my career, we had a lot of trick skiers skiing at our lake and with us, and Kiko Bizzotta from Italy was kind of needling me, and he was like, you should start trick skiing again. I'm like, I haven't trick skied in like 5 years. And he goes like, I bet you can't qualify for the Masters. And I was like, let me see, maybe I can. So Jack had some of the Masters qualification things. I'm trying to think of what year this was. I quit skiing in 93, so it was probably 92, because I just had Alexander when I was 91. So I feverishly trick skied for a couple of weeks, went in, made the qualification,
Wow.
and got to the Masters with that. And so, yeah, it was kind of fun. And to be able to sort of come off the sofa and trick 6,000 points, which today means nothing, but we had no flips then that were worth $500, 500 points. So yeah, it was kind of fun. Enjoyed trick skiing.
Very, very cool. Well, and we had a brief discussion with Sammy about the Pro Tour, and then kind of how things evolved into you being the organizers of the Pause Tour. And I wanted to talk to you about that, because even in that episode a couple of years ago, he goes, "You really need to talk to Camille about that." So I'm here to talk to Camille about that. Tell us about kind of the ending or the beginning of the Pro Tour to the Pause Tour. What was going on and what created that dynamic?
Actually, the real impetus for it was safety for the skiers. We unlike today, where they're skiing on they're skiing on a lot of man-made lakes. We were skiing on, I mean, huge giant natural lakes, and so the wind would roll up, and the back of the jump is lifting out of the water, and they're like, let's go jumping. We have 15,000 people sitting on the shore. Like, that's not cool. I mean, at a certain point, yeah, the show must go on, but you can't risk hurting someone. So that really was sort of my reason for starting a skiers association, was to be able to I don't want to say assert our rights, but at least do some, like, create some safety things, and and a group dynamic that would help work with all of the sponsors. So that's kind of how it got started. I happened to, and I was living in Orlando at the time, downtown in Orlando, and I lived next door to a guy named Bill Plumunden, and he was the CEO of Budget Rent-A-Car out of Chicago. And very, nice, beautiful wife, like really, like just a fun kind of dynamic. And we got to talking about it. He's like, wow, that's kind of crazy that you do that. And we started talking, and the next thing I know, he's like, could Budget sponsor that? And I'm like, yeah, we travel everywhere. So kind of one thing led to another. The Make-A-Wish Foundation with Henry Landworth in Orlando. I mean, there was a lot of components that came in for the Pause Tour. And when we started trying to put it together, we went back to the other tour and all of the sponsors, and we said, hey, this would be great for everybody. It'd be great for the entire sport. What part would you like to do with this? I mean, we can divvy up the boats, or the boats can each have, if there's 12 events, I mean, there's a way for everyone to be involved in this. And unfortunately, the other tour, which was managed by Water Ski Magazine, they didn't want to do that because they own the tour. So they're like, we're going to do a separate tour. Forget it. So we would be in Fort Worth or in Dallas. They would be in Fort Worth, and they'd have all the events on the opposite. And the only thing that Budget Rent-A-Car wanted was to unite the sport and to have the only tour. So while it was incredibly successful for that year, we had live television, which, okay, I guess we do now with streaming, but then that was pretty cool. We went to Europe. We went to Japan. I mean, it was truly a worldwide tour in 1991. And, but at the end of the time, budgets didn't want to be involved in that kind of like infighting in the sport, and it was really just too bad. And you can kind of see where the sport went from 1991 onward on the trajectory for professional events. So
well, and I don't know if anybody from Budget Rent-A-Car is going to listen to this episode, but if they do, it's been 30 years since that commercial, and I still remember the jingle. You got to get where you are in a Florida
That's
budget
right.
rent-a-car.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's there. So it worked. The marketing has worked, and every time I go pick out a rental car, Budget's at the top of my mind. Good. So the Pro Tour happens, all sorts of dynamics there, but one of the things Sammy and you are so good at is finding multiple ways to use the sport. So when I say that, you're either an athlete, or you're thinking out from a sponsorship level or a business level, or maybe you're on the microphone. There's so many angles that you're taking at this. And one of those angles was ski design and ski development. You were with O'Brien for a long, long time. In fact, I would say my first real slalom ski was a Camille Duvall Pro with the pink 64-inch, qualified for the nationals when I was 7 on that thing.
Right on.
Yeah, everybody gave me a lot of grief, and then I found out, I think it was many years later, Freddie Winter had a post, and he skied on one too. So I was right where I needed to be. An amazing ski. So I wanted to ask you, and I've had some time actually. There was a tournament about 5 years ago. Me and Pete Surratt had plenty of time to be on the microphone, just basically breaking down the history of water skiing. And we were talking about O'Brien, and they were cleaning out a bunch of stuff at the home office. And there's a lot of posters of you and skis and all that type of thing. But from a marketing standpoint with O'Brien, I mean, you guys had commercials, you had ads. Obviously you were winning, you were on top of the podium. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the biggest part of my skiing career. And it all started, in fact, I was telling someone this the other night at dinner about, they were like, we were talking about kids skis. And I said, yes, in fact, Herb O'Brien was the person who sent me my first real slalom ski. It was the O'Brien Mach 1, and it was white with the double red racing stripes on it with blue binding. It was very cool. Very cool. But, I mean, as soon as I got it, it was like, boom, my skiing went straight up, because I was skiing on a wooden ski before that. So always remember that. And he's a huge part of our sport and a huge part of the design of our sport. And I always felt compelled to work with them. I did have a stint with Cypress Garden Skis, which was kind of cool. Back in the day, but I got stolen back to O'Brien. So I was really happy to be there with them. And I worked with Mike McAleer and Bill Wiesner. I mean, those are great, great people. But I think the plus that O'Brien had over everyone else is they were owned by the Coleman Company out of Wichita. And the Coleman family were fabulous. They took all the water skiers under their wings. First time I was ever in a boardroom to talk about anything was there. So I got a great business education from being with those people and in that particular arena. And they didn't mind spending the money. So yeah, we had a beautiful ad agency out of Seattle that worked. And I remember the first ad was a black and white double page ad. It was just me standing with a ski, and it said, "If you lost to Camille Duvall before, you're in bigger trouble now." And I thought, oh my God, that's horrible. People are going to hate me. And then I was like, oh no, they thought it was kind of a cool ad. But yeah, they always took some kind of crazy tack like that. And then I had, the privilege and honor to get to ski with Andy Mapple through all of those years. I'm like, how cool is that? I mean, on every single level. So yeah, it was a great time. I'm sure I'm missing somebody who I should thank through all of those years, but it was a great thing to do. And then sort of down the road, the opportunity arose to do Duvall skis. It's Sammy and I were kind of working toward. He'd worked with Dennis Kidder, who's still a good friend, and he pulled his knowledge from there. I pulled my knowledge from there, and we came out with it in the under one umbrella was Duvall skis on the super high end, Kidder, and then Joby. Sort of on the lower end, which because you can't cannibalize. Everybody can't be the best ski company on everything, but we had some really fun stuff. Like we would go to the Pro Tour stops. We would work with our dealer. We'd have them invite all of their best customers out to try our ski, and they could ski on the Pro Tour site with us in the boat. Cool. I mean, that's where we sold a lot of skis. I mean, right here, that was pretty fun. But hard to stay at that level with technology and everything else. And quite frankly, taking a cue from Martha Stewart, if I had it to do all over again, I would put my skis in Kmart, and I'd probably still have skis in Kmart today. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, that's true. It's interesting that you mentioned earlier that you really always had a story, right? So you always had a story if you were on the microphone at getting interviewed at a Pro Tour. And I actually remember and I don't think it was the launch yet of Duvall skis, but you may have been a couple years into it, and you were talking about your slalom skiing, how it sat like a race car driver down in the car, right? Like the binding was actually on the ski. And I still remember that. So it's just interesting how those stories stay with you. And that was another ski. I skied a couple seasons on a Duvall. So man, if you weren't developing skis, I don't know what I would have been on. I would have been lost.
Well, I'm glad that you chose the best.
Always the best. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the broadcasting side of it, because I was wondering, and I know you've done a podcast with Wade Cox, and I've talked to Wade a couple of times about announcing and those types of things. And, you look at water skiing of what you can do and the skills that you get from that. But did it open up other doors to other sports and other opportunities along your journey when you started announcing skiing?
Absolutely. I got tapped right away. I had met a couple of the executives at ESPN, and I got tapped right away to work on the first X Games. So my God, I don't know where we are on, like 40 something X Games now. I don't know, but it was pretty fun. I went in and I covered water skiing, and I covered some of the bicycling, which is new to me, but it was kind of a cool, fun, interesting way to get involved in the sport. And then from there, I started working with Lifetime Television, and I was a sideline reporter for the WNBA, which was also in infancy. And that was like really cool to be able to be a sideline reporter and contribute to at the halftime show. So that was really fun. And then from there, that led to Center Ice on ESPN, and my son Alexander was playing hockey and I was playing hockey. So that was kind of fun to be able to get to be a sideline reporter for Center Ice on ESPN. And then I had the show Men's Journal, which was also on ESPN, like a lifestyle travel show. And they had a really good host. He's still working in television. His name is Don Wildman. And he's like a super cool guy, not the best athlete. Sorry, Don, don't get mad at me. So they needed someone who could do the rock climbing and do the interview at the same time.
Okay.
And so we did like some of the most amazing things. I did my diving certification in Belize on camera. We whitewater rafted the Fu in Chile, which
Wow.
was beyond. And some of those things really stoked my love of outdoor adventure, which is what I'm loving doing here right now. What else did we do on there? We're hang gliding. We really just did everything. It was a super fun program to be able to do, and enjoy doing it with Don. Don was like I learned so much about television working with him, because I was kind of winging it, because I was just like working on my sport. So
Sure.
this was totally different, and he was a big help for me in that.
Let me ask you this, because you've done so many different things, from marketing skis to television to now real estate. When you look back on your water ski career and the training that went into it, the discipline that went into it, talk to us a little bit about how that may have helped you in these other areas as you've been successful transitioning to other parts of life.
Well, I think any professional athlete that gets to that level knows how to work hard. They know how to work under pressure. They know how to look out into the future and try to find ways to get better. And I think that carries over into any business thing that you do. And I think that for me, I mean, as an employer, I would always like to hire an athlete, because I know they know how to work, they know how to be accountable, and that kind of thing. And I think that goes a long way in today's world, whatever you're doing. I mean, right now I'm selling real estate in Lake Tahoe, California, which I love, and it's amazing, and it's a beautiful resort area. So I'm selling one day, I've got a lakefront, which I'm selling. I can certainly talk about that to people. I'm selling things over Slopeside and Olympic Valley and North Star and that kind of thing, paddleboarding. So, it's a lifestyle sale for me. So that makes it kind of a little bit easier on that front of things. But yeah, it was definitely, I think it definitely helps in business, because again, it teaches you to think under pressure, and sometimes you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go back to where we were at the top of the episode talking about the World Tournament. I assume that when you were at the tournament, you got to see some of the skiing, slalom, trick, and jump. I like to ask this question to a lot of folks of your generation. What are the biggest changes that you've seen in the sport, just from a performance standpoint, from the skiers and how they're skiing today versus when you were skiing then?
For me, like when I grew up, we were hand driving. Most of these people have never even had that. They get in, they punch the button, and the boat goes. So yeah, it's a very different, and I still ski today. I didn't ski for 25 years, and I went back to water skiing 4, 5, 6 years ago. I was training up at Twin Lakes outside of New York City. But the biggest thing for me is zero off. I mean, it changed the sport in a lot of different ways. I think it made it more equal in many ways, but also you needed to learn. Like, I couldn't figure out how to work with it, and finally we were working with I still work with Mastercraft, and they sent a boat out in the summer, and it happened to be Freddie Krueger's jump boat. So we ski at 6,000 feet. We're at elevation before we even get started, water ski. And this boat, like, they were like, it's a gorilla, oh my God. And I got behind it, and I was like, oh, I got it. All you got to do is like get in position, and you are over there. And so I think that's a very simplistic way to put it. I'm sure people are laughing at me, all the young people out there, but it, like, I kind of could figure it out, and it gets you there faster. There's more power. You're not generating it yourself. Well, you are, but it's a different generation of power. You're leveraging that power. And
Sure.
I think before, with hand driving, the boat was kind of soft and spongy, and then you had to work with a spring on the backside of that. So yeah, I just think that's the biggest thing I see. And how exciting for the girls to get to jump on a big jump, and with a little more speed. I think that's pretty cool too, to see a woman jump 200 feet. I mean, wow, crazy. My longest jump was 154, but that was on a 5-foot jump at 30 miles an hour.
Sure.
Yeah.
Still got to cut hard to do that. There's no doubt about it. But it's interesting. Yeah, we had Chris Lapointe on the podcast, and I was asking him that. Of course, Chris, he continues to ski, and he said, I go back and I look at those pictures and I look at pictures now of skiing and, my technique. He's just like, well, back then that's just how you had to ski on those skis, so the
Mhm.
technology changes along with the speed control systems and the way you leverage it and the where there's momentum and those types of things. And, really as your career evolved, I mean, when you were really young, I'm thinking probably just now making the progression into, getting off wood skis and going up kind of the journey of where technology is now, we're seeing skiers ski a lot longer. It's like, they're skiing into their 40s and their 50s. And I just wanted to get your perspective on that, because back then with hand driving and the conditions, I mean, if you're going and jumping in Whitecaps in Wichita, Kansas for a pro tour, it's just hard on your body. There's no way around it. So maybe making the sport safer, the equipment, the speed control is probably contributing to that. What's your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right on that. And in fact, whenever the Pro Tour comes to California, I always go because I enjoy getting to see everyone. And then again, I'm still a fan of my own sport. I love watching what they're doing. It's like super cool and fun. And that lake, Shoreline Lake, is just so amazing. And the jump looks great. And Freddie was there, and I was like, oh, Freddie, I really think Freddie Krueger, I'm thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind, trying to jump again. And he said, Camille, I said, but I think I would just disintegrate into dust if I hit the jump. And he goes like, you'd be surprised. He said, the jump is a lot longer. You're not just like hitting into a wall. It kind of
Yeah.
launches you a little bit more. The boat helps you a lot more. And he said, that's why I can still ski. And I mean,
Oh,
and Scott Ellis skied in the last Worlds that were at Jack's. I mean, and he was in his late 40s. So yeah, and I quit skiing when I was 33, due to a neck injury. So yeah, it's I think it does help. And you also look at the athletes when you, like, for instance, you brought up Chris Lapointe. I mean, Chris Lapointe was like an oak tree when he was skiing. I mean, his shoulders were this big, his arms were this big. I mean, his back was this big, and like all of the girls were taller. And I don't know. It just, like, I think the sport was, you had to create so much more energy around it. It just created these sort of, huge physical specimen of skiers that were out
sure,
there.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt. Yeah, it's changed a lot. We were talking to your brother about that even with the boats when we were talking about outboard engines and jumping. It's like, man, there was a period of time you had to adjust from an outboard engine back to an inboard and all of those things. And you guys were doing that on the Pro Tour.
Mhm.
And that was part of the marketing though for the Pro Tour, it looked like, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, when Yamaha came in, I mean, I loved getting to jump behind those boats because there was so much more power behind them. But then you go to the flip side is, back in the Masters was run behind a outboard Hydrodyne twin rig. So imagine tricking behind that. I mean, like, that is not that was not that fun. But yeah, you just kind of had to roll with the punches and do whatever you could do, because I do remember skiing in Knoxville on one of the Pro Tour events, and they had a storm the night before, and I'm cutting into the bottom of the jump, and I feel something on my skis, and there's a branch rolling up under my skis onto the jump ramp with me. So yeah, it was a little bit more rustic, shall we
Yeah,
say.
yeah. No, it definitely has changed a lot. I was going to ask you this question. You were inducted to the Hall of Fame and many years ago, and I'm looking at that right now, and all of the titles that you have. 15-time national champ, 43-time Pro Tour Slalom champion, 5-time Masters champion, 5-time Coors Light Slalom Grand Prix champion. The list goes on. Of course, multiple championships on the world stage with the world team. What, when you look at all of those things, is the one you're most proud of?
Gosh, well, let me say I've been incredibly fortunate to have that level of career and have so many people support me to get there. It's not something you do on your own. But I would say probably the most memorable win for me was the first win on the Coors Light Pro Tour in 1984. It was we all sense in the sport that this was the future. This is where the sport's going. And thank you, Rob Shirley, for your vision and foresight and support and money and everything you've done to move our sport into that direction. But yeah, I mean, that one really meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot because Dina and I think there were 8 stops on the tour, and this was the 8th stop, and we'd gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and she would win and I would win, and it was just, neck and neck and neck. And we were skiing in Lake Lanier and outside of Atlanta, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, so that's kind of my stomping grounds out there. So, as is the Masters, all those things kind of felt like home court to me because of where I grew up. But yeah, I think that one was, I'm very proud of that. And Dina and I also, we've been joined at the hip our whole lives since we were little girls. And it also meant a lot to me. She came in with the number 1 bib on, and I had the number 2. And after I won, she took her bib off and put it on me for one. And I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Well, that was cool too, to, watch you guys compete, because it was not only in slalom, but it was in jump. And then, there was a period of time there, like it looked like you surged ahead in slalom and then Dina surged ahead in jump, but you would still compete against each other. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, we were incredibly fortunate. We trained together too outside. Again, we mentioned Andy and Bruce and Tony and Sammy and me, like, all together. And if you can't get better in that group, I don't know. If you're really set up for success in there. But yeah, I mean, we traded back and forth, and there was definitely a rivalry there, but there was more made out of it in the press than there was between the two of us, which I think is interesting. But I think everybody needs a foil. I mean, everyone needs someone to compete against to make them the best they can be. And she was that person for me at that time. And so I thank her very much for that. And yeah, we would be standing on that dock on Sunday at noon when they would be ready to go off with the women's jumping, just the 2 of us standing there every weekend doing that. Like, okay, ready to go. Yep. Ready to go. Let's go. So yeah, it was fun with that. And then towards the end of the career, end of my career, people started catching up to me in slalom. And I think one year, maybe it was 86, I think I won every slalom tournament I entered.
Okay.
So it was just like one of those years. It's like, wow, can't teach that.
Yeah.
But we do like fun things, like they used to have a tournament called USA versus the world. So the US ski team would go versus the world on the point system. So for instance, Dina would go out and jump, 140. So we didn't want to jump more than 140. We wanted to jump 140 so that we could all get the 1,000 points for the team standings. And so we did the same thing in slalom. So it was really fun to be able to do that kind of stuff. And then as I got towards the end of my career, jump skis got a little bit bigger. And I think that was a huge help to me. I mean, when I was skiing, I was, 5'11", about 137. And, that's big for a girl. And I think that helped me a lot. In fact, in 93, I did win the Pro Tour in jumping. And maybe it's just equipment. I'm not sure, but it's definitely helped some of the bigger skiers, like Carl Roberge. I think that helped him too, as his skis got a little bit bigger. He's a big guy like I am. And so I think that helped him as well. So.
Yeah, very cool. Well, you brought up the word rivalry, and I wanted to ask you this question. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast when it comes to USA teams, but that span of that decade through the 80s, it was intense internationally. I mean, it was intense from team to team. It was intense. I think we talked to Sammy a little bit about this, even when, skiing against Patrice and some of the things there. And things look like they've changed a little bit from that, just in the ski community, I think, because a lot of the skiers ski together. But tell us about that period of time. I mean, like, if you show up to a world tournament, Team USA means business, and it was pretty strict on hey, we're here to win the gold medal and get out of here. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do remember growing up as a kid, and I think the first time I made the US ski team, it was like on my 15th birthday. So I was pretty young, and I recognized pretty quickly that it was harder to make the US team than it was to win a medal in the World Championships, just because there were so many great skiers here. And so you had to go into the team trials, like team trial year, do or die. I mean, if you're hurt, too bad. We're not taking the last 10 tournaments where you were amazing.
Right.
You didn't have a sprained ankle, which you're going to get over within a week. But nope, that was the way it was. So there was, intense pressure, which the sport is like that anyway. You go out and fall around your first buoy on your first pass, you're done, no practice. So it was a lot like that. And I also think that, can you excuse me 1 second? Oh, sorry. It was my dog. I thought he wanted.
Oh, no worries.
I wanted out. In a very intense pressure when you got to the World Championships. And for instance, I remember the women's events used to be all before the men's. So by the time Sammy and Carl and Corey and Bob took to the course, Dean and I had already fixed everything. We'd won jumping, we'd won slalom, we'd done well in tricks, and we were, she usually was ahead of me in overall because she was a better trick skier, and I was kind of scraggling around there on third in overall. So the boys, we always handed it off to them in a really good way. And then, from country to country, there was a lot of rivalry, but I think in general, overall, broad brushing sports, people who try, it's very competitive, but it's a kinder, gentler way than it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe.
That's a good way to say it.
It's just they're just a little bit different in this kind of thing. So it was super fun. And we were our generation was handed an undefeated US ski team. And when we all retired, we handed over an undefeated US ski team.
Very cool.
We were not going to let that happen on our watch. No.
Very, very, very cool. Well, I wanted to ask you this statement, if you could complete the end of the sentence. I water ski because.
I love it. I love the physical pleasure of it. I love being outside. I love being in the, summertime. I mean, there's nothing better than being on a boat with all of your friends and going out and water skiing. That's why I water ski. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, Camille, this has been an amazing podcast, and I want to give you a handoff. I know you're doing a lot of real estate, and some people may be interested in what you said in this podcast and want to find you. Where can they contact you?
Well, I live in a small town near Lake Tahoe called Truckee, California. I work primarily in California on the north and west shores of Lake Tahoe, and then all of the ski resorts here. I work with Sotheby's International Realty, which is, to me, one of the best global brands in the world. I'm able to pick up the phone and call anybody anywhere and have my clients taken care of, and I will do the same for any of my colleagues that send me their clients here. So I'm at Sierra Sotheby's Realty in Truckee, California. Or you can look at my website, which is CamilleDuvallSellsTahoe.com.
Tahoe.com. Okay, perfect. Well, Camille, I don't think this is the last time we're going to have you on the podcast. I have a feeling I got some ideas down the road. So I thank you so much for joining us today. And it was really cool to see all the pictures that you were able to make the 50th reunion at Jack's, and just to have you involved in the sport and everything you've done for the sport. I want to thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. It was my pleasure. Well, until next time, we're signing off.